Good afternoon. I'm Counselor Dee Knutson. I would like to call our weekly informational together for June 30th, 2008, and thank you all for being here. Besides the agenda that you have in front of you, I would also like to publicly announce that we are going to have an executive session immediately after the informational for contract negotiations. And I just learned that, and so wanted to give you a heads up on that so you don't start out the door too early for your supper dinner. And we have lots of important topics to discuss today, so we will go at a nice fast clip here. First of all, I'd like to welcome Deborah Owen with a City Council staff report.
Thank you, and I'll keep this very brief as our agenda is longer today. Just to remind Council that they'll be electing their new leadership next Monday, July 7th, and that always follows at the end of the 7 o'clock meeting. That is when the Council will then kind of adjourn into themselves, and then you will select by vote, an affirmative vote, first nominate, and then vote in the affirmative for the council member you would choose as chair, and then again we'll repeat that process for the vice chair. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And now we will run through our committee reports. Let's see, Audit Committee, could anyone provide me, I know we have a couple councilors gone, Audit Committee report, anyone? Okay, I know that we're later going to have an internal audit report, so that's probably good enough there. Councilor Jameson, did I interrupt you? Did you have anything else to add?
No report.
Okay, sorry that I'm going that fast. I'll try to slow down just a little bit. Fiscal Committee, report from anyone on Fiscal Committee, please, with a couple of city councilors gone today.
I don't think there's a report there either.
All right. Land Use Committee, Councilor Litz.
You've got one here, Councilor.
Okay.
There has been no Land Use Committee meeting for quite a while. However, following this year, we will be having a Land Use Committee concerning drainage and water quality issues.
And thank you very much. Public Services Committee, Councilor Brown.
No report.
Okay. Under open discussion, Councilor Brown.
2 weeks ago, we had discussed the Homeless Advisory Board proposal, and we have with us a few members of the Homeless Advisory Board here with us today, and also our esteemed colleagues from the county. I see Jeff Barth and then Commissioner Tweet, who is also on the Homeless Advisory Board with me. And we have a very short presentation for you, and then we'll open it up to questions, since there were a number of questions 2 weeks ago. I believe Hugh Grogan, Stacy Teason, and Judy Boosman were going to do that presentation. So let's start with that.
Good afternoon, council people. We wanted to start out with just a brief video. It's of the people that are residents of the house, and it's about a 4-minute video, and we thought that would just give you a sense of who the people are that we're talking about. And so if we could do that, and then Stacy will speak about the Housing First initiatives. Stacy is the Homeless Advisory Board coordinator, and Judy will talk about, as president of the Homeless Advisory Board, about the HAB's endorsement of our proposal, and then I'll speak to some of the things that are currently happening with Safe Home.
I'll apologize. I think we're having a little bit of a problem with the system. Our media services crew couldn't make it today, so our intern Alex is helping us out. So just bear with us as we kind of work through this.
You know what, Hugh, maybe you should start the presentation while you...
We'll start with the presentation, and then that we can interject at any point in the process. And then Commissioner Tweed also wanted to speak from the perspective of the County Commission, too. So.
Aren't we glad it's the last day of the month and we can have confusion and turn it over to a new month tomorrow? While we see if we can get the media fixed. First of all,
Will you just introduce yourself for
I
the
will.
listening public?
I was just going to do that. I said,
sorry.
first of all, usually I have my hat on that says, I'm Judy Buseman, I'm the health director. And today, as Hugh mentioned, I'm Judy Buseman, but I am the HAB chair at the current moment. And I think I just want to do just a couple of statements. What we're talking about today is a project. It's a project that has the city and the county are both examining and chewing on, and we're really glad, and as the HAB, that we have these two organizations looking together at this partnership, because we certainly support this project, but we support it in concept, and it is the city and county that need to look at, does it meet the fiscal issues that you need to look at. So we're here as the HAB to be informational for you today. Know that we believe that the Russell project, as we're looking at it, has a lot of opportunity for us. But if it's not the right project, then we're anxious for you to tell us that, so that not as the HAB, but then as we look at our business plan where we might need to tighten it up, because I think we've had some important discussion around this project that we didn't have before. We've had some stretching on what does this partnership between the city and the county mean. And we've just gotten to that tough topic of money and how do we come together in this partnership, and we have to frame that up. And this discussion is helpful to do that, even if we look at this project and with all its questions we say, what's the next project we want to look at, and say, how does it fit your business plan? So please know that we're engaging with you as we bring information, and then I'll turn it over to my partners here today.
Hi, I'm Stacy Teason, and I am the Homeless Coordinator for the Homeless Advisory Board. And just so you understand that I am a half-city, half-county employee, so I'm here representing both of the entities, but my job here today is to talk a little bit about Housing First. There's a little handout going out, so you just kind of, I know we brought it up a couple different times, and so I just kind of want to step-by-step a little bit through what Housing First really is, because ultimately that's what this Army-Navy Reserve building is. It's permanent supportive housing, which means that this is a long-term investment involving case management, mental health, and medical services of some sort to these people that we would be helping. And basically, we just kind of go through Housing First as a concept is basically something that tells us that we're going to ignore at the beginning what the problems are that the homeless people are having and go forward on getting them stabilized and putting a roof over their heads. So what we're saying is that we understand that it's impossible to focus on what your current situation is if you don't know where you're sleeping at night. So nationwide, we've come to understand that Housing First is the right way to go. There are approximately 150 or so programs across the United States that focus on Housing First. And if you look at the third paragraph or the third bullet on this, there's several examples on there. And in the blue, it says Housing First is viewed as a crucial component of 10-year plans to end homelessness. That's part of what my job is implementing the 10-year plan that Sioux Falls and the mayor put together several years ago. Housing First has 3 criteria, basically, that we look at to define it as successful. One of those is housing retention, keeping them housed. Harm reduction is something that we've seen as a benefit, which means that people are using alcohol and using drugs less. And the third is expense, and we all understand that the expense seems to be the one that keeps getting to be the stumbling block, but that can't be the ultimate factor that we're looking at when we're trying to decide what's in the best interest for those in our community who are least able to care for themselves. Housing First has been around, or endorsed at least, by the Bush administration. It's been around for several years, but in 1999, the Housing and Urban Development Office endorsed it and is now required to devote at least a third of its funding towards chronically homeless. And that's exactly, again, the population that this Army-Navy Reserve building would be addressing. Housing First is also endorsed by the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness as a best practice for government and service agencies to use in their fight to end homelessness in America. So basically, what we're saying is that putting a roof over someone's head, providing them with supportive services, and really just acknowledging who they are and what they can be. If they're given a little bit of support, if they're given a little bit of attention, they were people too. And they once made a decision that obviously led them down the wrong path, and we need to look at what we can do to get them going forward. And you know, as great of a city as Sioux Falls is, this is something that we could do.
Questions? Councilor Stagers.
Yes, you mentioned the three criteria for success: keeping them housed, keeping them from harming themselves and others. Is that right?
But harm reduction basically means consuming alcohol less. So like.
Oh, okay. And then also reducing expense. I guess I would be thinking that one of the other criteria would be they get out of this program.
Actually, because it's permanent supportive housing, this is their home. So this would be where they would continue to remain.
Forever?
Well, it depends. They always choose to move, but the purpose of a Housing First program is permanent supportive housing. They might need less services as they go, so that would ultimately, and you can develop it any way you want with a hierarchy kind of thing. You can have serious intensive services at the beginning, and then as they've stabilized, you can cut back on those, and then they're just having their apartment. And if things are going appropriately, then there's a way to go ahead and start charging them rent, provided they have some sort of income.
Yeah, I guess I think that's one of the important criteria, that we try to get them out of the housing and let them become independent, responsible individuals living in their own private housing.
That would be what this is, though. Transitional housing is the way that things have been done in the past, and is definitely something that people have looked at. But the ultimate research shows that providing someone a permanent place to live, that's their home, is what permanent housing is.
I guess I think of permanent housing as somebody having their own private apartment, their own private home, not a government apartment or a government home, but their own private housing where they're being responsible and paying for it and maintaining it. And I think that's really part of the American dream.
This would be their own apartment.
Councilor Brown.
Stacy, please correct me if I'm wrong on any of this, but to help answer Councilor Stagger's questions, these are individuals who have exhausted all of their options. They're at their end of their life. In many cities, the programs are referred to almost as a hospice program, and there are no other options. These people are at the end of their ropes. The goal here is to house them and help reduce the harm they're inducing to themselves, and also the services that are provided to them, and house them humanely in what is really truly the winter of their life. That's why they're called the chronic homeless. So that's these aren't individuals that are going to be working jobs like you or me.
Yeah, well, if I can just ask a kind of a follow-on then. I mean, to me, correct me if I'm wrong in this, but it sounds like, well, this is just simply warehousing people.
Absolutely not. That's exactly why this is such a greater concept. A shelter is warehousing people, living in a dormitory style where nothing is yours and you're sharing everything. This is your very own apartment. There's 34 or 35 of them that we're looking at building in here. Each one would have their own access, their own door, so they can close it out to the world and just be with themselves. It's an apartment building is basically what we're looking at, and providing supportive services to them, which they can choose to whatever level they want to participate in.
And I guess I would just like to add at that point, too, is that we're talking about very, very basic, housing unit, nothing, over the top at all. I mean, just very, very, very basic to get these people out of under our bridges when it's 20 below zero, and out of our just cycle as far as emergency rooms and detox. Councilor Brown.
I would just follow it up with to reemphasize what Stacy said, that 150 cities across the country of all sizes have used this Housing First model, and it's been encouraged by the current administration as a way to solve homelessness. So this is not something that is untested by any stretch.
Okay. Thank you, Stacy, very much. And thank you for your work every day with these important people. Mr. Grogan.
And I failed to mention, too, that Randy Bartunik is here, too, for questions about the project that you've had before you. What I wanted to do is give you a bit of a real quick history, about how the county got into doing this program. And it goes back to the days when the city had got involved in funding the Salvation Army program, and that was set up as an emergency shelter. I think the intent to begin with was that we'd be serving about 25 people at the Salvation Army. And I believe it was 3 winters that we had that program. We ended up, by the end of the program, we were seeing about 80 people a night at the Salvation Army facility. What happened with the Salvation Army back in 2006 was that they did not have a building to move the program to. So excuse me, I should have introduced myself, Hugh Grogan, the Director of County Human Services, but also a member of the Homeless Advisory Board, which is a joint city-county task force charged with looking at homelessness. We had a real concern at the HAB about what was going to happen to people. You know, if we didn't have the Salvation Army program available, what was going to happen? And from the advocacy community and from people on the streets, lots of concern raised about there being nothing out there. I did make a commitment with the endorsement of my commissioners that we would step forward from the county perspective and guarantee that we would have everybody housed in the city that year, that we would not have anybody on the streets, and that we would, as much as possible, try to prevent any deaths from people freezing to death because they had no place to go. That was it was a gigantic effort that we made. We were very aggressive on getting people into permanent housing, whether that was rentals, into the shelters. We worked closely with both the St. Francis House and the Mission. And for a lot of people, we dealt with motels because there was no place else to put them. The county then came, I came to the Homeless Advisory Board after we got through that year, and knowing some of the problems we had that year. And we had a group of people that it was really difficult to come up with places for them to go. And that was because of the chemical dependency, the advanced chronic drinking, and also homelessness. And it made it real difficult to get them into shelters. And it also made it difficult to find motels and rental units that were willing to take people. And so I came to the HAB and asked for the HAB's endorsement to go to the county commission and ask for permission to do a pilot program to take a group of people that we had identified, and that was through studies that we had done back in 2005 and 2006. We had identified, I think it was 30 to 35 people that fit the description of chronically chemically dependent and chronically homeless. And we targeted 20 people of that population of people and brought them into a program. It got endorsed by the Homeless Advisory Board. I went to the county commission, and the commission gave me approval for funding for a pilot project with a commitment that they would do this for a 1-year period of time. And it was really seen as a Band-Aid until we as a community could come together to create a more comprehensive long-term response to the problem. We targeted 20 people, and when we looked at the 20 people, we tried to find the people that we knew were the hardest on the streets to deal with, the people that were living outside all the time, that were constantly in detox, in jail, in and out of all of those systems, the hospital emergency rooms and that kind of thing. The program, we had beginnings of the program occurring in the fall of 2007. We didn't actually have it fully operational until the beginning of this year. And when I say fully operational, that means we had 10 people located on site in county buildings, and we had an additional 10 people that we've got in scatter sites throughout the community. That can be with private landlords or with or in either apartments or in motels. It's also premised on intensive case management. And so our efforts to do case management are to see that we can keep people, that we can maintain people in housing. Now, one of the questions that's come up and one of the concerns that's been raised is an impression that we will be able to save money by what we're doing. And in those earlier studies, we showed that we were spending about $31,000 a year, and yet these people continued to be homeless. Our premise when we got into this was that we wouldn't necessarily save money, but that we could come up with a program where we could guarantee that we had people housed and hopefully at no more expense than what we had been spending under the old system. People will come to me and say, well, why should I care? If somebody's a drunk on the streets, why does it bother me? And my response to that is that it impacts the quality of life for all of us. It's from larger than just the moral issue of what we need to do as a community and who we are as a community, is the issue of what it is like when you go downtown and people are sleeping under the ledge at the library or in the bushes under the bridges and in those kinds of places. And for most of the people that we're serving in this program, which is called Project Safe Home, that's the kind of lifestyle that they've lived. And I think as I made presentations around the community, most people were not responsive at all to what we were doing, not even just at your level, but even at the level of providers out in the field. They were saying this is not the right thing to be doing, that you're enabling people, that you're creating more problems by what you're looking at doing. As we've gotten into it, and we've got the people that we're working with, and what we brought to you today is a video. Do we have it working? But the words of the people that are in the programs help people to understand what the need is for the program. We've seen amazing things happen. The national research had showed us that people, when their living conditions are stabilized, you begin to see changes in other areas of their life. And so we have, in the short period of time we've been running, we have one person who's been sober for all but the first month of the program. We have one person that's just completing treatment and 2 people that are in the process of going into treatment right now. For our group of 20, to me, that's amazing results in a very quick period of time. I would echo Councilman Vernon Brown's suggestion that when we're talking about this program, to me, it's always been more of a hospice program. We're not serving people that are 20 and 25 and drink hard. I mean, we're hoping that we have prevention programs so we don't, for people in that age category, don't end up where the folks are that we're serving. But the population of people that we have are over 40. They've been drinking and homeless for years and years and years, and most of them are not going to see 50 or 60. The lifespan is going to be shortened considerably by the health issues that they bring to the table. And so I see it more as a hospice program, and we will have some exceptions. We will have some people that get into the workforce and are able to maintain a place, and we work towards that with everyone. But for most of the people we serve, our success will be maintaining them in a place and hopefully getting them on a program like a federal disability program where we can get some federal funding to help offset some of their medical costs or some of their living costs. That's the kind of situation that we're in. As we've looked at what we're doing, we feel that we are really making a difference with the people that we're serving. And the voices, if we've got it, we'll do the voices of the people so you get a sense of who it is that we're talking about.
It's teaching me how to care for myself, Nowadays, I don't have to worry about anybody down there no more. I got a place. So I'm really benefiting out of that.
Well, I think I've been actually less. When I was on the street, the first thing I do is, me and her would, get buzzed. Now I get up, I make a pot of coffee. But, like I say, when you're out there, there ain't no chance for that.
I got a real good caseworker. Like, taking to me all my appointments, giving me advice on things, helping me. There's sometimes I can't understand some of the paperwork I'm doing. I'm glad she's there to help me, So that Mr. Dearborn really, my caseworker really, I depend on her.
We're broadening our horizons, thinking of the future, whereas in the past, just get back to our camp and go to sleep.
Not kill on the street.
Yeah, I'd be right back in it.
There are times, if you're homeless, sometimes, it doesn't hurt to me to beg, panhandle. That's survival on the street.
If it could be expanded, involving more people, giving someone else a chance, that's positive. transform everyone completely or change everyone. But if it helps someone, that's the key. If it's helping, I can understand why homeless people jump on bridges, walk in front of cars, because there's just nothing there. Because maybe you can't work for physical problems, mental problems. No, it's not a good place. And if anything, this program gives people a chance, gives them hope.
It's doing me real good. Real good.
We wanted to bring the voices of the people that we're serving to the table so that you could get a sense of who the people are that we're serving. In the program that we've got, we have, as I said, not tried to take the people that be the easiest people to serve. We've tried to find the hardest people and bring them into the program. The dilemma and the challenge we're facing at the city, or excuse me, with the county right now is, and I passed out to you earlier reports showing how much the county spends and how far in excess of all the other counties in South Dakota we spend at Minnehaha County on poverty and programs for the poor. Of all the spending in the state, we spend 84 cents of every dollar in Minnehaha County. And I look at this program as an opportunity for us as a community to show who we are as a community and to do something even more. But I don't see us being able to do it from the county perspective, just with county dollars. It really takes us to a higher level of what we're providing. And I know Commissioner Tweet also has some comments that she wishes to make to the council.
Thank you, Mr. Grogan. Ms. Sweet.
Hi, my name is Carol Tweed, and I'm a Minnehaha County Commissioner, and I serve on the Homeless Advisory Board representing the county, along with Vernon Brown, who represents you as the city. It's been an honor and a pleasure to do that. I know you're going to have a whole lot of questions, and I might be jumping ahead just a tiny bit. But I think that this program, as Hugh ended his comments with, really says everything about what our community is, how we perceive our community, how we perceive and work with the most unfortunate people who are in our community. That's been a commitment of the County Commission forever. I think it's a commitment that our mayor made when he put together his task force almost 4 years ago, and the blueprint was written and enacted with the Homeless Advisory Board coming into being. I think that Vernon, Councilor Brown, would probably agree that we are dealing with an issue that is difficult to wrap our arms around. Sometimes we are dealing with information that is only anecdotal, and we don't have all the information yet that we need to move ahead, and we want that. He and I have been working at this for 3 years, and so we have had the benefit, I guess, of having information that all of a sudden is being thrust on you in bits and pieces. And so if I were one of the 8 of you or the 5 of commissioners, I'd be dragging my feet a little bit also. So, Vernon and I sat down along with Hugh Grogan on Friday afternoon for a little bit, and I said, I think I want to say a couple of things at this meeting because I think part of the angst that you all are feeling, and me also to a certain extent, has to do with the timing issues. The timing issues are kind of related, I believe, to the possible access of the Army-Navy building that came upon us rather suddenly. So we, more quickly than we wanted to, perhaps have to be gathering up some information. And so what I'd like to propose today on the part of the county, and I shared this with the County Commission this afternoon as we ended a budget hearing, is that we do kind of take a deep breath, step back, and try to do several things while we're waiting for this October deadline to come along. I believe that is an October deadline now for that building. That's a long time. So the first thing that I would like to suggest, and my fellow county commissioners agree with me, is that we form a site committee. Would consist of 2 county commissioners, and one of them would not be me, and 3 city council people, and one of them would not be Councilor Brown, and that this site committee would ride herd over this Army-Navy building in a couple of different ways, and go out in the community and find options. And I think that we've had several people who have said, yeah, but what about finding a piece of ground and building a new one, and wouldn't the cost be less? So we've got some time here. Let's go and find the answers to that question. So I'd like to suggest that. And then I would also like to suggest, and actually Councilor Knudsen suggested it to me out in the hallway coming in here, and I said, that's one of the things I've got on my list, is that the city and county both throw whatever kind of dollars it would take to hiring an architect to come in and give us some decent numbers on what it would cost to renovate that building. There are numbers flying all over the place out there. Let's get some numbers. We've got some time to do that. And thirdly, just to continue walking down the road with a can-do attitude. We had a budget hearing for our Human Services Department last week one evening, and the Minnehaha County Commission firmly support moving ahead and continuing the pilot program that Hugh and everyone has been talking about. In fact, we're supporting that pilot program because it's going to give us operational cost numbers that we are only guessing at today, and it's going to give us more statistical proof that this kind of a program can work. So we are putting another personnel to this program, one more staff person. We have told Hugh he can hire for the Housing First program. I would like to invite the City Council to help us with this program for the pilot program because Hugh really needs 2 people in that spot right now. He has taken away people from his family homeless project in order to do this project. This is not an institutionalized project at all. We are doing this as a pilot in order for us to show the community that it will work. So those are my suggestions today, that we just step back, take a deep breath, and that we proceed in partnership with looking at this building, putting some numbers to getting some decent renovation costs, going out and finding out if there's another area in the community, and then to ask for your support for our pilot project. I'd be willing to answer questions, too, if you have them along the way.
Councilor Stagers.
Yes, Carol, I understand that next year's county budget is going to be one of the best in 10 years. And so how much more money is the county putting into this homeless project? Additional money?
1 staff person.
So we're not going to have to pay, you don't want the city to throw any money into the staff person?
Hugh has asked for 2 staff people to keep it, to really do that program correctly. Right now, he has 20 people in the program. The goal, of course, has been to take those 30 chronics. So we'd like to increase this program by 30%. And so he'll do whatever he can with whatever he gets, but he's going to be able to show us the validity of this program far better if we staff it properly.
If I could just also mention, my understanding is that the program, the pilot program for the 20 right now is costing the county $50,000. Is that correct?
No.
I mean, that's what I've been told.
I don't know who's told you that, but that wouldn't be correct. For one thing, we're using county facilities that used to house homeless families, so we certainly have to put some value to those apartments as well as utilities and a whole lot of other things. Hugh can probably better answer that question. Yeah.
So how many dollars is the county putting towards the pilot program for 20?
Would you come to the microphone, please?
The $50,000 represents additional dollars that we put into the system to add a position. We pulled 1 position off of families, so you've got $100,000, and then you have the costs that go with the administrative. So on staff costs, we're at about $120,000. for running the building in 2006, and this included, in 2007, and this was with some safe home participants and some, and before that, some families, and also doing remodeling. We spent about $100,000 on the building, on repairs and utilities and maintenance. Now, we also bought the buildings, and the county has a capital investment of about $250,000 in the buildings from several years ago.
So I guess if I could just ask, why aren't you continuing? You already have some buildings, and I mean, because when we're, the figures we've heard for this facility out in Russell is like $2.5 million, and it sounds like you're far from even being close to having put that amount of money into the pilot program already. In other words, are you operating a more efficient, cheaper program than if we would go out there and do a $2.5 million renovation?
I think a couple of things. One is that the buildings that we've got are really towards the end of their life expectancy. They're 80 to 100 years old. They've had really hard use over the years. So we've got lots of costs that relate to those kinds of things. We also have the people in the scatter sites, and we're finding, and the reason I came to the commission asking for additional positions is, one is I need to have the one position to get back with families, because we've really taken away our efforts with, or reduced our efforts with families, and I need to be able to get back to that. And then the second position was to work with the Safe Home program. And one of the problems we're having with that is because of the scatter sites, it's a lot more, we end up spending a lot more time working with the people that are in the scatter sites around the community. What this facility would offer us in the long term is a permanent place to serve more people in a central location, so you can develop all the complementary services that would be needed there in a much more, at least it would seem like in the long term, much more economic fashion. So what we've been, even with things as simple as how we do our on-site management, we're trading an apartment with a person right now. We're not, a lot of the things that we've done aren't really up to what the program really should have.
Councilor Brown.
Just to follow that up, the Homeless Advisory Board really is a partnership between the city and the county, and the county graciously stepped forward and said, we'll run this as a pilot project. This was always meant to be a short-term way for us to measure results and put together the business plan that we're presenting you today. It was never meant to be an institutionalized program. We just needed some hard numbers to show why the business plan does make sense.
Well, no, go ahead.
And I would add to that, we were facing the potential of a crisis with our inability to get people in that group, in that particular subpopulation. We just were having a real difficult time finding places for them to go. And so without the Salvation Army program, we really had a crisis on our hand if we didn't have something like this in place.
And I believe that that our city does have a very much an obligation to do something significant as far as the homeless are concerned. And I believe that we have, as a community, talked about this issue long enough, and it's time for us to put our money where our mouths, some of our mouths have been. And I believe that our current process, system for the chronically homeless is merely a Band-Aid project. It's a, if that. I mean, we have great people out there like Stacy and Hugh that are working 24 hours a day trying to help the homeless, and I'm really appreciative of the entire Homeless Advisory Board, including Councilor Brown, who have devoted many, many hours for at least 3 years just trying to, like Commissioner Tweed said, get their arms around this topic. But I don't think, as far as the chronic homeless are concerned in our community, that we can continue to do just more of the same, because that's not working. That's not working successfully enough. And we all know that just, between medical bills, incarceration, detox treatments, ambulance rides, they just go round and round and round and round with these same people that are costing our community thousands of dollars. And it's also a moral disgrace for our community to not be doing more for them. And I just really am extremely appreciative of all of your efforts, and I'm extremely strong supporter of this concept, this initiative, regardless of where it ends up being.
Commissioner Barth would also like to make a statement. Commissioner Barth would like to make a statement to the council.
Yes, please come forward, County Commissioner Jeff Barth. Thank you for being here today, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff Barth, Minnehaha County Commissioner. Commissioner Tweed and I don't always agree on everything, but we do agree that there's demonstrable value in what we're doing now with the pilot program, and it has stretched Hugh Grogan's staff to a great extent. And I'd like to just reiterate a little bit about what Commissioner Tweed suggested, which is that you guys come forward and help us a little bit with some additional staffing, and that we study not just the possibility of the Army and Navy Reserve Center, but we talk to we look at the other options that might still be there. So we're not saying no to that, but we're going forward because we do still have some flexibility with that October date on that. I believe that's October date. And I guess I would urge you to support the plan by finding another body for us, and by looking at all the options that might still be on the table. We'll have better numbers going forward and see the value of it. And thank you very much.
And thank you again for being here today. And I would just like to ask at this time for any volunteers up here on the City Council, and I know we have a couple of members who are unable to be here. Or, sorry, do you have something first? Councilor Stager, sorry.
Yeah. Jeff, there are homeless people in Sioux Falls. I mean, everybody agrees with that. But the problem is, what is the best way to deal with this? And I guess, my inclination, and, I think probably many people in the community would be, let's let the private, nonprofits do that. Work with the nonprofits instead of working with the city government. Has the county commission given any thought about working with private nonprofits?
I believe we have, and honestly, as liaison to some nonprofits, I've certainly had some contact with them. But right now, we have a plan, and going forward, I think, we should strengthen the pilot program and see how we're doing, and then keep our eyes open. This certainly is a great opportunity up there on Russell Avenue, but we don't have to jump at the first bait we see. We should keep our eyes peeled for the best opportunities possible. And I thank you for the question.
And Councilor Brown.
To address Councilor Stager's question, we have, as the Homeless Advisory Board, discussed having the nonprofits involved. You have to understand that today they are not serving this population. No one is. That's the point of this. No one is serving them, and it is government's role to help those who are least able to help themselves. But going forward, the Homeless Advisory Board would hope that we've had discussions about if this Army-Navy Reserve building or any other location or site that we create, our hope would be to do some sort of RFP with the nonprofits to help us manage and run it. So they would have some sort of a role in it. And I would just follow it somewhat with an anecdotal story. When we were watching that video, this is the first I'd seen it today too, and some of you, Councilor Jameson, even recognized one of the individuals, and the same individual in the dark T-shirt is someone that I remember as a reporter more than 10 years ago seeing on the streets. These are our citizens. We can't continue to do things the same way. We will always get the same results. This is different, and I recognize that, and I've had the advantage of 3 years of learning about this. So I hope that going forward we can all learn about it together and find a new way to do this, as 150 other cities across the country have done, and found a way to help homeless people in a better fashion and create a better quality of life for communities as a whole.
And I guess I would just like to add that I really am not married to that particular site either, but I just am a strong proponent of the concept. And I do believe that, again, this opportunity has come up for us to investigate further, and I'll just might as well just tell you that after visiting with quite a few of the other city councilors, even before our meeting started today, that Councilor Brown and I will be bringing forward starting next week or whatever, however long it takes to get the process done here, a supplemental appropriation to pay half of the cost of at least finding out what the real numbers are at the Army Navy Reserve Building to see if we want to go forward any further with that particular site or if we want to reject it totally and whatever. But I'm just saying, again, you will see that supplemental appropriation request soon, like hopefully next Monday. Councilor Stagers.
Yeah, Dee, I was just wondering, at this time, do you know how much money you're going to be asking for?
Yes, excuse me. I have heard between 30 and 35,000. So again, by then we should have a little bit better idea when we make our supplemental appropriations before you, we will be able to tell you, of course, an exact amount. But that's the range that I've heard, and I have been spending quite a bit of time on this project.
So 30,000 from us and presumably?
No, sorry. Half from us and half from the county.
Okay.
And I believe there's enough support at the county commission level to match this so that we can get real numbers. Because again, just to remind everyone out there in the listening public is, you've seen a number, 2.6 million, whatever, out there. But again, that was merely an eyeball. I mean, again, it was a good, it's an estimate, but it was not a real architectural study. And so I think it is time. I think there's enough support. I know there's enough support among this city council to at least have an architectural firm walk through that building very carefully, very slowly, with their sharpest pencils ever, and give us a real number so then we can decide, do we want to go forward or not? Because like I said, I'm not married to just that site, but on the other hand, in the 6 years I've been on city council, I would just like to stress once again that I've not had any developers or any hotel owners or any whatever come forward and say, hey, Dee, I have the exact spot for you. I would love to build you an apartment building or give you half an apartment building for this project. And again, I think that in this whole topic that we have a little bit of this NIMBY problem ahead of us too, which is not in my backyard. And yet I'd like to remind the world that I think the new banquet location is going beautifully, and I think that all the controversy about the the TC, I can't even say my acronym right now, but the sober houses, again, we had all this uproar for weeks and weeks and weeks, and some of the meanest emails and phone calls that I have ever received came from people on that topic, and yet those wonderful homes are working out very well for people who are not as blessed as I am. So I really look forward to us moving forward on that. And Councilor Jameson.
I just wanted to see if I could boil this down a little bit, maybe for some of us. But so, as I understand it, the president pretty much decided he wanted to end homelessness, right? And he sets up these buildings and gives it to people like us who might be able to do that. Then the mayor makes a decision 4 years ago to set a goal to do it here in Sioux Falls. This building becomes available to us, and now we've kind of got the cart ahead of the horse, I believe, and that the mayor has decided he wants to end homelessness, and that's a great deal. That's what we should do, really. But I think, in essence, what the HAB board had figured out is how to do that, how to end homelessness. And the county has an answer, the city has an answer. Together they came together and figured this out. In essence, now what they want, this board needs to really do is get funding, right? And I think that's the hurdle we need to talk about, is the funding procedure to do it. Where it would be, I think, is only part of the answer. If it's the Naval Reserve Building, that's just one option. If it's down the street, around the corner, that's just another option. But initially, I think our challenge is to figure out how to pay for it, how to come up with the money, and who's going to pay for it. And I guess the real question probably is ahead of us is, how much do we want to pay for something that the county has already been paying for years, or forever, really? How much do we want to step up to the plate and help support that? I would just urge us to focus on that issue before we spend $30,000, even 15 from the county, 15 from the city, even if it's just that much, which isn't very much, really, to define the usefulness of that Naval Reserve Building, that we really focus on the challenge of a partnership. What would work? What are we willing to participate in this? And move forward from there. I just don't want to see us get the cart ahead of the horse. That's just...
Councilor Litz.
It's interesting, Mr. Jameson, to bring some of those points out because I thought about them as well. Part of me agrees with Dr. Staggers on this whole thing, where's the personal responsibility and all that, but unfortunately, I've been in the real world a lot in some of the major metropolitan areas, and I've been to places where there are blocks and blocks and blocks of people living in cardboard boxes, and you don't touch their cardboard box, and I don't want to see that happen in Sioux Falls. I don't think it's going to. The weather sort of precludes that, but I know there's a huge homeless contingent that lives in town in relation to the population that we do have here. Some people are never going to get out of it. They're just stuck there. They're going to die that way. There's other people who are going to be able to redeem themselves with a little bit of help, and God bless them. We're talking about President supporting this initiative, and I would like to say, regardless of how you feel about the war, we are going to have a large amount of people coming back out of this war with invisible injuries, and it's going to pack the ranks of the homeless under these bridges, just like it did in Vietnam, but even more so due to the length of their stay and the nature of the explosions that hurt their brains. I'm a veteran, so I'm very conscious of that. I also find, I toured the building out there, and I find it ironic that, America's Best has been hosed out there since 1959, and we're going to take somebody off the street, and we've got to bring it up to code, but that's the way it is, and I think everybody deserves a chance not to burn to death if the building catches fire. Now, Mr. Bartunik has done an excellent job, got us an extension until October, is that correct? Until we have to decide what to do with this building. The county has a cemetery sitting out there out on Cliff and the last street out there. I don't know what it is, 62nd Street or something. And I've toured that cemetery and looked at some of those tombstones, and nobody else is ever going to visit them. And I don't know what my point is, but I know that people wind up in bad situations. Nobody cares about them. And they die that way, and it's up to the county to bury them. I'm aware that's out there. We watched the film here today, and, you talk about that guy being there since I went to kindergarten with that guy. He lived in one of the nicer houses in the North End. You would have never thought he'd wind up where he's at. But I was aware of him in 1975 living out in the street. It's a miracle he's still alive. I don't know I just don't know what the situation is with him, but there he is in front of us today saying, this is something for me. I can make a pot of coffee instead of going to the liquor store right away. The cart ahead of the horse argument, I'm not sure if I buy that, Greg. I appreciate you saying that. But this is a building, this is a situation that came up, and we need to have an analysis done on how much it's going to cost to redo that building, and we also need to get some sort of a task force together to find out what our operating costs would be after that gets going now, and that's what I think we're talking about here today. Those are some things we have to do. The other thing about that building nobody has talked about is the value of the building, the facility itself. Now, it's an unusual one. If you get an appraiser out there, he's probably going to come in between $3.8 and $4.8 million. That's what that place is probably worth, but it's obviously got a limited market to it. So the city or the county, I don't know about that, how it's going to wind up, who the ownership is going to be in the end, but we will have some assets coming out of this in the end. Are they going to offset the amount that we spend? No. The money part's been brought up here time and time again. Are we going to offset the cost of the ambulance, police protection? The answer obviously is no. But I found out in this life, I think that sometimes you just got to do the next right thing. And I believe we're heading towards the next right thing with these people. And I don't mean to sound, call them those people, but, they are certainly a subclassification of this population. So, D, I agree. You ask for that money, I'm going to vote for it because I think we need to get to the bottom of how much that building is going to cost to renovate, what we're going to get out of it, how many rooms are going to be in it, and then we have to have somebody figuring out the operating cost for the situation. And then we talk about where to get the money. I mean, we went through this same thing with the task force, what comes first, and I think we have to find out what our needs are before we can put the money thing together, because if we don't know what we need, we don't know how much it's going to cost. So, this thing's been at me for a while, and Melanie invited me down to meet with her group here a while back, which I did, and I think we need to move forward with this thing, and this is the next right thing we have to do to move forward. Now, Councilor Costello said somebody knows they can put an apartment together for $50 or $60, a unit. I'm skeptical of those numbers, but until we find out about this opportunity, whether it's the one for us or not, I think we're just we're not going anyplace with it. So, Dee, I appreciate you bring that forward, and I'm going to support that. So, thank you.
And thank you, Councilor Litz. And Councilor Jameson, I just want to say too, and then you go ahead, is that is that I'm very, of course, I want to be very responsible financially on this project, and that just goes without saying. And I do believe with our budget hearings coming up and our capital improvement hearings coming up that we will be able to address those very important funding issues if we decide to go forward at that site or any other site. So that, of course, in other words, is what I'm trying to say is that I believe we can do these, have these 3 or 4 threads going simultaneously. And I also do believe that if we choose, that there will be money in the capital improvements budget for us to go forward with possibly buying that building, well, that building would be free for us, but I mean, is renovating that building if we decide to, or another building. I believe there will be adequate money in our capital improvement project, but of course, that's a very important point you brought up, and you go ahead.
Just wondering if somebody from the county maybe could talk to us a little bit about the partnership that they're proposing. Let's just say, for example, that this building is, let's just say it's $2 million now to remodel it, $2 million. Just show us the game plan from there.
Okay. I'm so glad you raised that question. I think that, we're kind of tiptoeing around here because there are a number of issues, but certainly how we move forward in the split is incredibly important, and it has to be decided before we settle on actually accessing a building. Because if we don't agree on that, then there's really not much point in us accessing a building to do the program. And as it so happens, I have with me today a letter that I wrote to Mayor Munson and to each and every city council person on May 21st, and it sort of draws a line in the sand about what the county is willing to do. First of all, I would refer to the Health and Human Services building. That is a building that is owned by the county. But, Greg, when we built that building, the city council paid for 3/4 of the building. We own the building. We each paid for the amount that we were using in that building. And my concept is that the city would own this building. If it's the Army-Navy building, the city's found the building, the city's negotiating for the building, the city would own the building, and the county would pay for half of the renovations. That's what the county commission has told me they're willing to do. And then if you don't mind, Madam Chair, could I just read a paragraph from this letter, because this is still our position. The decision by both the City Council and County Commission will hinge on a determination of a city-county split for remodeling and yearly programming costs. It is important we make this determination prior to the submission of the application. Fortunately, we have a highly successful history of partnership in joint building projects to guide us. The one I just mentioned is the latest. The development of a joint powers agreement was vital to the successful initiation and completion of both the Law Enforcement Center and Siouxland Health and Human Services facilities. The County Commission proposes a 50-50 cost share on both remodeling and program costs for the project. While there may be some that argue that state law makes the county responsible for welfare services and homeless issues, we believe the county already exceeds its statutory responsibility for welfare service. This supportive housing program sets a higher standard that is part of our community culture to address a problem that impacts existing city and county services. This program is strongly recommended by the Homeless Advisory Board. This board was appointed by both the City of Sioux Falls and Minnehaha County to address homeless issues in Sioux Falls. So you're right. We do have to talk about those ongoing costs and how we address them. And, and that's what we're hoping, too, that the pilot program can give us really good numbers for us to work on. But we do have to make those decisions on how we split.
Yes, Councilor Jamison, go ahead.
The pilot program you're running right now, the costs are?
We're still evaluating those costs. It was that, relates kind of to the question that Kermit asked, and this program has been up and running for about 6 months, and, we're still, there will be medical costs, dental costs, some of those kinds of things, treatment programs that people are requesting to get in and are being paid for. So this is supportive housing, and we don't know yet exactly what those totals are going to be.
When do you think you'll have a total?
I think another, 6 months. The program will have been up and running for a year at that time. We should be able to take those 20 folks and figure out, what those costs are.
Could I suggest that maybe we don't wait another 6 months? Give us a half year or something, even though it may not be perfect, but for us to wait a year
Yeah.
to get that number.
Well, I don't think we want to wait that long either. In the business plan, we had, the mayor appointed Judy Buseman, the county appointed Hugh Grogan to begin to put some meat on this skeleton that we have. And they have actually, I think you've all seen it, a proposed, and I don't know if Judy wants to talk about that, but they have worked on a proposed budget for this new building, and perhaps, you want to talk about that, Judy? Or, I don't have a copy of that with me, but
I understand proposed is a tough thing to get you nailed down to, but it's just troublesome, I would think, for us to vote on this partnership not knowing what it's going to cost every year to run it.
Yeah.
We're already in for $1 million to remodel, and then half of all the expenses. That's like, frankly, an open checkbook, and that doesn't make sense for us to make a decision to do that.
I guess I would just say at this point, and I hope I haven't been misunderstood, is that to me we are, I'm going to say far, but we are quite a ways yet from voting on a partnership. I mean, because I think that all of your concerns and questions are incredibly valid. I mean, that's an understatement, actually. But I'm just saying, I'm just speaking for myself here, but I just, as a city councilor, I really endorse the concept, just the concept of our community doing something significant as far as permanent supportive housing. But I'm just talking concept, and that building has been made available to us as a possibility anyway. And so, just in the concept mode, for us to do a study to see, what would that building take to really create 35 units for chronically homeless. But I'm not asking yet on next Monday night or even the next Monday night for a vote yet among us as far as what the partnership should be with the county. But obviously, eventually, we'll have to decide that. You follow what I'm saying, Councilor Jameson?
I do, and I think everybody agrees that they've come up with a solution, and I think everybody probably wants to help support it. But we just can't jump in. We need to know what the numbers are to really run it, and even if it's, even if we just continued funding what they're doing right now in this pilot program, I think we're going to be better off than if we start overbuilding a whole new building for them to do that. But it's a lot of questions.
Excuse me, Councilor Brown.
Hugh, I believe, has some initial numbers. We have some questions about whether those are going to stay where they're at, but that's, Hugh, if you want to share those, and I've shared this with the council before, but if you want to talk about that again, I think that might be helpful for this
discussion.
discussion.
And could I just give a concluding remark here, because I absolutely agree with what you're saying, Councilor Jameson, but we don't have the numbers yet for remodeling, and we don't have the total numbers yet for what operational costs will be. I mean, we're going to work really hard together to get those numbers, but for right now, we don't have the solid numbers for either part of what we need.
Thank you, Commissioner Tweet, for everything.
We've been looking at the numbers that we've had for the first quarter of the year and taking all the costs in. We're looking at, and you need to understand, this includes medical. It doesn't include necessarily all direct costs. For the city, the costs that we've seen so far, and this is primarily related to the health department, is $4,600 during that period of time. For the county, we had $180,000, but it includes potential hospital bills. So those numbers include all the different costs that could be out there. With what we've done so far, at least in the first quarter, and we're real concerned about numbers because this population, things could change, especially on the medical side, but we're estimating right now that we'd be looking at somewhere between 25 and 30,000, less than what we were spending under the former system, and that would include housing people year-round, but those are just very tentative numbers per person.
Okay, but is this a 6-month number that you're giving me, this total?
These are for the first 4 months.
First 4 months.
Yes.
Thank you very much for that addition. I would like to, unless there's objection among the city council, and again stressing that we're not appropriating money today or next Monday or probably even the next Monday for anything more than any or hopefully a study of that building, is that I would like to ask right now among the city councilors who are present, would any of you volunteer, please, to serve on a site committee? And Councilor Brown, let's see, I think you're excluded, so I'm sorry to exclude you, but you can if you find some good tips out there for us, we'll welcome them. Would there be any city councilors that would be willing to serve on a site committee with a couple county commissioners to just look around our own community for other spots that might work for permanent supportive housing if in fact we decide to go ahead with this concept, and if in fact we decide that it's too expensive to remodel the Navy Reserve building? I will volunteer myself first of all, and I need 2 more volunteers, please. I'll have to make assignments if I don't get volunteers.
I'll volunteer for that.
Thank you, Councilor Anderson. You could read my mind. And thank you, Councilor Litz. So, Commissioner Tweet, you now have 3 volunteers there for a site committee. So or did you want 2 or 3?
We want, we're giving you 3. So, yeah. We have more folks on.
Did I appoint more than I was supposed to? No. Okay. All right. So then we'll look for, the 3 of us, Councilor Anderson, Councilor Litz, and I will look forward to marching orders from someone in the near future on site committee work. And again, I got this long discussion. I'm sorry, I got a little bit confused. Would you come forward, Commissioner Tweet? Tell me again, what do you need me to do today as far as this can-do attitude, which I have, and others have up here, obviously, as far as pilot programs? What would you like from us right now, today, on that?
The commitment, which I think I've heard, to have three folks set with 2 county folks. I'm not sure who they'll be, so I'll ask them tomorrow. And the commitment for the architectural study, which we will bring back to our county commission. And I guess just the other thing is just a kind of a heart and soul commitment that we'll keep walking down this road, and with the idea that this is a partnership that will work and make our community a much richer, better place to live in.
Okay.
So you've taken care of 2 of the 3, and the third one we have to do ourselves.
Okay, and thank you, but we would like to walk with you. Some of us would like to walk very, very, very closely with you, until we make more progress than we've done in the past for the chronically homeless. And again, when I say that, I'm not necessarily endorsing the particular percentages that the county has presented at this time. I'm far from that, but I like to walk closely with you, and so would other counselors.
And there's a whole number of people in this room that are here just because they feel very strongly about the value of what we've been talking about this afternoon.
And
so
thank you. And thank you again, all of you who are here today, and I'm sorry if I have said, yes. Would those members of the Homeless Advisory Board who are here today, would they stand, please, and be recognized? Would those of you stand? And Councilor Brown, would you stand? You're an important member.
We also had Alan Graff here, who had to leave, it appears.
Okay. Okay.
And we have staff here.
Okay. And staff stand too, and I'm sorry I didn't say staff too, a very important, obviously, crucial component here. And thank you all for your work in our community, homeless. I mean, it's just amazing to just...
I'm kind of surprised.
Yes, Councilor Stagers.
We didn't have any homeless people here.
And...
I mean, I think that's important. If you want to continue with this, that at least we, instead of, hearing them on the screen, if this is something that's serious for them, they should be here.
Okay.
Madam Chair, could...
But we have to have their point of view. We can't have just, people who are...
Councilor
Well,
Tweet.
no, they should be coming to us, because this is going to be something that's benefiting them.
Councilor Tweet, will you go ahead?
Madam Chair, just one thing that I was reminded of as I walked back to my chair. There was one other thing, and that was your individual support, but as well as your discussion on whether you would be willing to help us with the pilot program in the form of some staff support. And then maybe just to say to Councilor Staggers, maybe they don't have any transportation to get here.
Yeah, but this is important. You could provide this transportation to them. I mean, we just can't, we have to get their point of view. We can't get a middle-class point of view. We have to get a point of view of people that are actually living there in the streets.
Commissioner Tweet, when you said about staff support, and so you mean further down the line, do you mean further down the line as far as like, operating expenses and so forth, or I might have misunderstood you. Yes, Mr. Grogan.
What happened at our budget hearing is I requested 2 positions. One was to replace the person that was working with families, and the county commission gave me authorization for that position. The second position was to add a person to the Safe Home Project so that we're able to better work with those people that are off our site. The direction I got from the county was from one of the county commissioners who's not here, is that our county commission did not approve that position, but they did ask me to make a request to the city, to the mayor and to the city council, that if, as a part of this partnership, that it would be appropriate for the city to consider funding that position. So it's the one position. On the question on the people coming here, Councilman, we did the video. We did the video because people do want to tell their stories, and we tried to come up with a way that would where people could present in a way that they could. We tried to ask questions that we thought the council would have, and have people respond to those. And we've looked at doing some additional videos. It is. I mean, it's not even just a matter of transportation, but just a setup here is difficult for people that are really struggling just to survive on the streets.
Yes, but I guess I would say I'm concerned that this looks so paternalistic, that you have all the answers for them, and I don't think you do, because I think we ought to be hearing what they are going through and what they would like, instead of just having it come from non-homeless people.
Madam Chair?
Well, and that was the intent of the videos.
I'm confident Hugh Grogan would take you over to the houses at any time. That offer's always been open.
Yeah.
And as well as he brought 4 individuals to our Homeless Advisory Board who visited with us under very difficult circumstances for them. But we also, as a Homeless Advisory Board, around Christmas time, toured their facility. And, that's what really opened my eyes to this project. And Hugh, if you could maybe work with Councilor Staggers to take him over there, I think that'd be a great opportunity.
We'd be very willing to do that. Hearing the voice, I mean, your point is very good. Mm-hmm. When I tell the story of what we're doing, it doesn't carry nearly the weight of it that it does when the people that we're serving do. This setting is a little bit more, like when we did it at the Homeless Advisory Board, it's a lot more intimate setting in terms of coming into a small room with just a couple of people. And so we could do that with any of the city council members that would want to, is set up some meetings at Safe Home so that you could get a sense of the people, a sense of what we're doing. And I found when people hear that, it's an amazing change of attitude about what we need to be doing and why we need to be doing it.
Thank you. And regarding the third item, possibly an additional staff person, again, that'll probably be a big hurdle for us, but we can obviously discuss that among ourselves. I just remember, last year the existing department heads, I think, I think there was a request for 20-some new staff people. So that is a tough one, but we will discuss it among ourselves. I won't make any definite commitment on that. Councilor Anderson, thank you.
Mr. Grogan, before you leave, what is the annual cost for extra staff person that you're going to be requesting?
With benefits, we're looking at about $55,000.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Also, I do have one other thing to say.
Yeah, go ahead. Just go ahead.
I do support the ideal of a homeless housing and that type of a program, but I am very concerned that even though we don't have a house or apartments here yet for these people, that we don't have a business plan, that we're not really, no matter whether or not we do put together a building or not, we need to see a strong type of business plan on what we're going to do, what groups are going to be involved in the care of these people, and then, propose cost at least.
And
what I'd like to see.
We are working, we do have a business plan that we presented earlier. What happened is this opportunity for a building that was much larger came up, and so we have presented that, and we do have copies of that we can get.
Thank you.
To you, Council.
Yes, in fact, would one of you make a copy available to Councilor Anderson soon, because he was not quite on the city council yet when I gave my copy to Councilor Jameson, so he is okay. Let's just say he has my entire file. That's how hard I'm lobbying him. So he doesn't need a copy,
So
but
we already
he
know
can give
his
two
vote.
copies to Councilor Anderson over here. Okay, and then one other thing I'd like to say on this is, Deborah, would you please, as soon as possible, meaning as soon as possible, would you please work with Randy Bartunik and Mr. Rowenhorst, Director Rowenhorst, I should say, from the Finance Department, on getting a supplemental appropriations plan ready for Councilor Brown and me to submit to this group as soon as possible. Thanks so much. Okay, we are going to move on again. I know it's been a lengthy discussion, but I think it's one we needed to have, and I appreciate all of your patience with me. So anyway, we're going to move on. Let's see, right before, well, first of all, I want to stay on open discussion just for a moment more, and I have one report for you on a totally different topic, but do any of you have any open discussion items? Okay, just hope to see all of you at the Mayor's Picnic on the 4th of July if you're in town. Again, the picnic is from 11 to 2, all free food for the whole community, thanks to some generous sponsors. And anyway, and then I have one homework assignment that I have finished that I want to hand out to you. And regards the next step, I'd like to forward this project, which is not a new one. It's called the Balanced Budget Resolution idea, to the Fiscal Committee. And I realize, Councilor Brown, you're the only one today who is here from the Fiscal Committee, but would you please take this forward to them and do as you wish with my suggestion. 2, 3. Thank you, Justice. You will recall a few weeks ago, as kind of a clearly not a member of the Fiscal Committee, but I was just sitting in that day and clearly on my own, but think that I feel strongly about this is that I believe the way we have the current balanced budget resolution written, I believe the intention was, very honorable and so forth. But it's what I would like to suggest to you. Again, my mission is to amend the resolution to make it less restrictive in the use of tax receipts during a budget cycle, because as you all know, as well as I do, that there are highs and lows in the flow of tax receipts, and certainly we have a problem, I believe, during the time tax receipts exceed the budget estimate. And of course, as you all know, it goes without saying that this resolution, my amendment, would and not only my amendment, but the resolution itself, obviously only allows use of funds for budget purposes. We're not talking about spending money here. We're talking about budgeting. And I think that it is, so it's what I did is I copied our current resolution that we passed in March of last year, and or it became effective in March of last year. And again, as committees, city councilors, I think we are a very hard-working group. I don't think we're perfect. We're close. We're really good, but we're not perfect. And I think we can always tweak resolutions to improve them. And I believe that that an unreasonable amount of money in reserve is not good government. I believe that we should balance the budget, but we should go ahead and be able to spend reserves at the same time. And again, I want to stress that, of course, I think we should balance the budget too. And again, I think it's important that we for the time being anyway, while we have the policy in place, I very much support the idea of at the end of a year, at the year end, that the reserve balance be equal to 25% of that year's general fund budget. So I'm not trying to change anything substantial here, but again, for the listening public more than for you, is the general fund is this year was about $110 million. It's funded by property taxes and 1% sales tax. But I think at the end of 2007, we left $6.5 million lying on the table because of the way the resolution is currently worded. And at the fiscal committee meeting, I believe some city councilors were surprised that there was different interpretations of the resolution. But again, I would just like to say that when I have visited with the city attorney, Justice Amundsen, about this, and is what my recommendations are for the fiscal committee to go forward with, and if they have better suggestions, I'd encourage them to go for it, is that under the second, be it further resolved, is my first choice would be to totally eliminate that section. If I can't win on that one, I would like to, my second option is to omit the last sentence, anyway, and you have that in front of you, and again, this is not new ordinance, it's resolution number 1507-07, and anyway, I would like to forward this to the fiscal committee to do as it wishes with my suggestion. Councilor Brown.
As the only member present today, a couple of thoughts. I think that the plan is to deal with this at our next meeting, but also a question for Finance Director Jean Rowenhorst. I'm still unclear about when we were putting this together. I remember those discussions, and the intent of the fiscal committee and the intent of this policy was to never limit it so those unreserved funds could never be spent. Where from that theory to it being implemented in practice did it break down?
Well, I think the wording, as far as we've read it, it doesn't seem to have any ability in there to present a budget that the expenses exceed the revenue. And that's what you'd be looking at. And it's very clear. It says in there you cannot, the expenses in the budget cannot exceed the revenue for the budget. And that seems to be a point of contention as far as the administration is concerned. It's clear to us.
Where was that discussion? Because we talked about this during fiscal committee, and you sat in all of those discussions, and that never came up during that discussion.
Well, I can't say that I recall the particular fiscal committee meetings, but nonetheless, the product that it finally came out was drafted in such a way that we can't see any way that we can have expenses exceed revenues without being in violation of that resolution.
Councilor Brown, I'd just like to add, I visited with the mayor again about this recently, but again, for people but this idea really is, I really am accepting responsibility for it, but I realize the administration is very supportive of it, but for someone like me who wants to keep moving the city forward, like you do and like other city councilors do, that I think that it was just that I'm not, I don't ever speak for the mayor. I don't ever try to speak for the mayor because I shouldn't ever try to speak for anyone else. But I believe that is what has happened is that, we say very, very bluntly that you need to have a balanced budget. And so I believe that this mayor and possibly other mayors that will succeed him believe that we say you must have a balanced budget, and so that this almost seems like it's disingenuous or incongruous to then add, but if you decide, later on, kind of like you're going to have other needs down the road, and so that you just know that you can come before us for a supplemental appropriation, that seems disingenuous, that it's, it's just that it's a conflict there that that a balanced budget should be a balanced budget, and that saying later that you can come before, we say you have to have a balanced budget, but then if you want to, spend other money somewhere, then, you come before us and we'll, give you the blessing. But I didn't say that very articulately, but I believe that improvement on the wording will be helpful to everyone, including the citizens of Sioux Falls.
We'll be happy to take a look at it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And again, you might have better suggestions than I do. Councilor Jameson.
Sure. Gene, could you tell us how you would have spent that $6 million so it wouldn't have been left on the table appropriately? What would be the...
I guess we haven't looked at that, so I don't want to...
I'm sorry, not how you were, what you would have spent it on, but how could you have gotten that back into the budget?
At what time? The only way we could get that $6.5 million back in the budget when you're coming up to year end would have to have been some sort of supplemental appropriations.
And that's the only way?
It's the only way that we know of.
Okay.
Councilor Brown.
For a clarification from you, Councilor Knudsen, you don't think that that's an appropriate method to do that, then?
I think that it might, I think that mechanism might be okay, but I think that it conflicts the way it's written right now. That I believe that it contradicts what the sentence is before that. But I do believe that process would be fine if, in fact, the earlier statements allowed that to happen in a different way.
Madam Chairman?
Yes.
When you look at this, as far as the example that I gave for why you do a supplemental appropriation is for a situation that comes up where you did not know something was there, you got new information, and we need to have a supplemental appropriation in order to achieve whatever that result is. It's a far different transaction when you put together a budget that balances and you deliberately know that there's something that's going to have to be done later on through a supplemental appropriation. That's not appropriate, I don't think, for the citizens. It really would become confusing in that you're putting together a budget that you know is erroneous, and then you have to come back at some later point and put it back in with a supplemental appropriation.
Thank you. I think you answered that more articulately than I did. Councilor Brown.
How does the state do it? Do you know? Because they obviously have reserves, and they...
I have no idea how the
Can we
state-
look at that
Yeah.
or before the fiscal committee meeting to figure out how the state does that? Because the legislature requires the governor to put together a balanced budget, and they also have to figure out how to use the reserves in excess that are not committed. So we don't need to reinvent the wheel here, I don't think.
I think that's a good suggestion, and I actually should be able to answer that because we've had extensive discussions at my house on this topic, but from day one, my husband couldn't believe I was going to vote for this wording as it was, and so I believe that's a very good suggestion. Okay, let's, Director Roanhorse, while you're up here, would you please go ahead and we'll let you get your papers, is that Director Roanhorse is going to provide our monthly financial report. And we all have copies of that. You all have your hard copy in front of you, I believe.
The best thing I can say about the financial report, a couple of things.
Just a little louder, please.
A couple of things that I can say about the financial report. Hopefully, it's boring at this point. I'd like to keep it that way. I've always felt if nobody ever hears from me, then or cares to hear from me, then I'm probably doing my job. The one thing to point out in the official, in the operating fund, we're through 42% of the year, but we got about 38% expended, so we're staying pretty well to our budget. And the only other things that we'd want to draw your attention to, again, if you go back to starting with page 9, again, is all the projects, and there's still a few of them that have not been started, but I can look at a couple of them and see that there's a reason they haven't been started, because it's things like engineering is being done earlier, will be done later in the year, so it can actually be constructed next year. Probably the biggest news that we have on the financial statement is we got all of our money in now for the month of June for sales tax, and we are now on a year-to-date basis up 2.2%. That's against our budget of 7%. So for whatever reason, we've had 2 months now that we're sitting at 2.2%. It's going to be very difficult, I would guess, and it's just a guess at this point, but it's going to be rather difficult to pull that 2.2 up significantly against the 7%. We'll know more, and when after we get July and August in, we'll be a lot more educated. But we're going to have to pay some attention to the CIP for '08 because we're going to be right on the border of getting the money in that we had on the budget. So I don't know if there's any questions about that.
Any questions? Councilor Jameson?
Did you say the goal was 7? Or
Yes.
and it came
For
in at 2.5?
'08. We're at 2.2 right now.
Yikes.
Yikes.
I mean, really. But do you see that as a cycle that kind of flows through? Is this something that we'll catch up on? And
Well, I think it's indicative of what you hear going on in society. The thing that makes me scratch my head is anecdotal evidence. You hear people talk to stores and that, and everybody's doing great. Sales are wonderful. This is physical evidence that somebody's sales are not wonderful. So we'll have to wait and see what happens here. But we're going to, like I say, we're going to have to pay attention to the CIP because the CIP, if you remember, we've only got about $250,000 that is not appropriated there, and we don't want to overrun our headlights. So we're going to have to be paying attention to that. So because the way you deal with it, particularly in the CIP sections, when we're out of money, we'll just stop. But then we'll have to pay attention also to the operating fund because that obviously gets the first penny. We've got some things that we can work with perhaps there a little more easily, but we're just going to have, at this point, we're going to have to be paying a lot of attention to it and be very cognizant of what's going on so that we don't, like I say, don't overrun our headlights.
Councilor Brown?
Gene, on a happier note, page 1, under the bank franchise tax, I noticed a huge increase in the actual revenue over the current budget. Can you explain what those numbers are doing?
It's kind of interesting. We had, if you recall, last year we had a big franchise tax windfall, and we were told it was a one-time deal, and that's all we're told about it, and we can't get any other information. We have, notwithstanding that was a one-time deal, we seem to have had another one-time deal. I can't explain it to you. Other than that's the answers we get from the Department of Revenue when we ask about it. But we do that. That's one of the things that if the CIP or if the first penny causes us trouble, we've got $1 million here to help us out on that.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Director Rowenhorst today on the monthly financial report? Thank you for that information. And would you go ahead? I think you have another item for us.
I have a real short presentation for you. The CIP book was distributed, a week ago today? And I just wanted to walk you through the first few pages of the CIP book. I'm sure everyone brought it with you because you're been studying it very diligently, and there will be a test on it. But the first thing that we want to take a look at is on page I. That's the capital program. It's the explanation of all the sources of funds, where the money is all coming from. And so you can look down this at any time, and you can see the EA, the ET, the FF. You'll see that back in the book itself, so you'll be able to know exactly where the funding is coming from all those transactions. So each fund type you're able to see. Go ahead. The total program funding is on page 1-1, And this is a schedule you've really not seen before in this sort of a layout. But what we've tried to do is give you a snapshot of what the CIP is all about. The total for the 5-year period, $564 million in revenue and $564 million in expenses for the CIP for '08. This is just a snapshot of the page that, and it's another one that it's testing your eyes for this point. This is all the sources of funds, and you can see them by year up there. And on the left-hand side, they're telling you where they're coming from. Again, for what the source is. Next one to go. And then we gave you a pie chart. I know this is a question that seems to come up. That's how the $564,000 is broke up as far as the funding sources. Sales tax, that would be the second penny in this situation, accounts for 33% of it. The state loans, 14% or $82 million. Federal and state funds, these are grants and federal type money that we get. And then bond funding, $124 million. That was the number that got a little confused because there was some information that was released, or information, I don't say released, was used that was not accurate. And then the user fees of $78 million up there is 13%. So that's where the funding is coming from. The funding uses, this is by function and by department. Go to this pie. Well, this is okay. This is the one that's funding the CIP and OSEP. How that's used by department. You'll see the earlier chart that you saw, or you're going to see another chart in back here that's cut a different way, but it'll be the same $564 million. On to the next one. The funding uses, this is where we're using the money. The enterprise and service funds get $235 million. Highways and streets over the next 5 years get $234 million. It's 41% of the CIP is going to highways and streets. Culture and recreation, which includes parks, gets $64 million. And then we have public safety for $14 million, and public safety for $14 million, what's in that? Is vehicles, but you got 2 fire stations in there. It's a big jump on that. Plus, there's some pretty heavy equipment to stock the stations. Next, sales and use tax assumptions on page 1-2. These are the assumptions that we made in putting the CIP together. One of the things you'll see for the '09 CIP in 208 and 209, 208 as I said 7%, we were at 6.5. We held that the same in '09 at 6.5% as far as the increase in the CIP goes. And then it's 6.5% for the out years also. We put in a 5% construction inflator, and that's actually assuming a 7% number with taking out inflation would take you back to 5% as far as the inflator. That's so we get everything you see in the CIP is in '08 dollars. So when you get out to 2013, those are still '08 dollars, and that's the way we make sure that we and we deflate the revenue accordingly also. And that's how we know that we're staying even as far as whether where the dollars are at. Okay, next. Capital program on page 1-3 is the breakdown in sources and uses again this is just the sales tax portion. People don't realize, I don't think, that there's a lot of more CIP money in here than just sales tax. Now, this is just the second penny, but you have a lot of money, particularly in water and water rec, that is not impacted by sales tax. Next. Sales and use tax breakdown, the CIP itself is $170 million. Debt service is $54 million, or about 22% of the total CIP, and then OSEP or other capital expenditures. And OSEP, again, is primarily rolling stock type stuff, police cars, fire apparatus, dump trucks, things of that nature. So it gives you a sense, again, of where the money is actually being used. Okay, next one. Breakdown by function and department. This is where I said we're going to cut it a little bit differently as far as the capital program summary. This is by fund. And that you can see down there in the lower right-hand corner, the $564 million, so we tie out there. Next, please. Breakdown by function, as opposed to where the sources go, highways and streets are $159 million, so the biggest chunk of with this CIP is of the sales tax is going into highways and streets. Other departments get $43 million, and Parks and Recreation gets 17% at $41 million. So that's where they're going. One of the key thing to take note of course, is a huge chunk of this is going into streets, although not all of it. Next. Okay, where are we? What? Okay, section 1 in here. This is the capital program, the summary for it. When you go on in, you have tabs in here for the CIP. That is the summary again, but it is that's for section 2. And then actually you get back into section 3 in the OSEP eventually. So are there any questions? We don't wanted to give this an overview, just a brief overview of it. We'll spend a lot of time when we actually present the CIP. But like I say, there was some misinformation that got out, and this is the correct information.
Councilor Brown.
Gene, could you email those slides to us so when we have our books in hand, we can use that sort of
In
as a
fact,
guide?
I think all of these slides came right out of the book, didn't they, or did we create a couple? You want the pie charts?
The pie charts we have, I know, but the definitions, I can.
We'll email it to you, but really, it is all in your book. We'll send you this part so you can keep it in a separate file if you'd like.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think that would be helpful. Also, Councilor Staggers.
Yes, Gene, when I was taking a look at the CIP book and the spending for 2009, I didn't see any spending for the Drake Springs pool for 2009.
That would be in 08.
But we're spending it actually in 2009. The pool's still...
The pool, we've got the bids back. The bids have been awarded. They're moving dirt.
With completion date for next year, right?
Completion date is next year.
So we pay it all up front then in 2008?
You're going to have basically all of the ground, everything will be done. If anything I'm not sure. I think it's supposed to open actually in 2009 in the spring, yes. Should have Mr. Kearney here to tell you that exactly.
Yeah, because it would seem
it's all in 08.
But I don't know, I guess I was just thinking that, the spending that we do in 08, yeah, we put in 08. Then the spending we do in 09, we put in 09. But that's not the case?
This spending is being done in 08. They're out there working on it.
So we're spending $4.7 million in 08.
The bids have not been awarded yet, but I don't think they've been awarded. Like I say, we should have Mr. Kearney here, but the bids are back in and they're looking at them at this point.
Okay. All right. Is any other questions for Director Rowenhorst today, please? Thank you very much for your work for our city, both of you. Okay. Now we're going to have our other report for today before we go into executive session, and I'd like to welcome our internal auditor, Rich Oakso. Forward to give those two reports, please.
And I'll try and be as brief as I can. You should have got an electronic version about a week ago, and you should have a hard copy in front of you. It's our fourth and fifth report of the year. We have about 15 projects scheduled for the year. Let's look at the building services. Basically, we're just looking at the how they handle the cash and building services. That's building permits, code enforcement, that sort of thing. Make sure that we had proper controls in place, and that we were collecting the revenue according to the ordinances. I want to thank Ron Bell and his staff for their cooperation during this audit. We had just a few opportunities for improvement. On page 3 there, we recommend that they review their policy manual. It was rather dated. And number 2 was there was a little inconsistency on how they handled the refunds, permit fees. And they were very responsive to our recommendations. The management response is on there on page 3, so they agreed with what we said, and they were implementing the actions. Is there any questions on that report at this time? Mr. Litz? Yes.
Rich, in here in the background, one of the things that you said that the building service city employees, et cetera.
Yes.
Code enforcement penalties. I was curious about the code enforcement penalties that fall under this department. Are there a large amount of uncollected penalties that were on the books, and if so, how old are some of the penalties?
We didn't specifically look at that. We were more concerned about collecting the cash and the proper controls over that. We weren't looking at the outstanding permits. But I think that probably would be a focus of an audit in the future, where we'd look into that enforcement efforts. If you want, we could look into your specific question of how many are uncollected. Is that your specific question?
No, you thought I was talking about permits, but I'm not. I'm talking about code enforcement penalties.
When the code enforcement officer assesses a penalty against a property, you want to know how many are unpaid or that sort of thing?
Yes, I would.
Yeah.
That'd be interesting to find that out.
Okay, I can look into that for you, and I'll email the response to you.
Thank you, Rich.
Okay.
Any other questions so far on this report?
If there's no questions, should we move on to
Sure.
Okay, the second report that we are presenting is the arena management agreement. The city has an agreement with SMG to manage the arena for us. We own the building, and obviously we pay the expenses, and we pay them a management fee to manage that building for us. We wanted to thank Rusty Curtins and his staff for their cooperation during this audit. Bottom page 1, basically they were in compliance with the terms of the agreement. We looked at various things like insurance, some of the financial aspects. We looked to see how they were keeping the building up, and that was rather interesting to go on a tour of the building. And as you can imagine, on page 4 there, some of our observations are there. It's obviously it's an old building. I think the council is quite aware of the age of the facility and the difficulties of maintaining it, but they're doing a pretty good job of doing what they can with a building that's 47 years old. The one thing that we would recommend is if we do another agreement that we try to match the actual practice with, with what we have in the agreement. Some of the financial things that they're not doing exactly as the contract is written, but the net result is okay. So we'd recommend that we would work with the attorney's office and purchasing whenever we have a new agreement with the management company to make sure that what we intend to do month to month is what's in the agreement. Are there any questions on the arena management contract?
Any questions at all?
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor
Yes.
Staggers.
Yeah, this doesn't have to do with any of these audits, Rich, but I just wanted to get a different perspective. On the CIP, we have $4.7 million authorized for the Drake Springs pool.
Yes.
And, they're starting on it this year.
Yes,
and we'll be spending money in 2008.
Yes.
And it looks like they'll be spending money in 2009. Normally, wouldn't you put down what you estimate for 2008, you're actually going to spend in 2008, and then any money you're going to spend, you put in 2009?
Well, what they do is when you let the contract, and I believe they're at that stage where they're evaluating the bids, which they've already had the opening. They're going to encumber that money with a purchase order for that contract. Let's say it's $4.7 million.
Okay.
At that time, most of the work is going to get done in 2008. We anticipate the contractor is going to get paid, and so that purchase order encumbrance is going to get lowered each time they make a payment. Let's say at the end of the year, we still have some payments to make.
Yeah.
We're going to do a carryover, an automatic carryover of all those projects that were started in 08. They're not going to be finished until 09. So that money doesn't have to be reappropriated. It was already appropriated in 2008. So that's what those carryovers are, whether it's actually been a purchase order encumbered. And the carry forwards are projects that had an appropriation, but they didn't have a purchase order in that year, so they have an automatic carry forward. And you should get notice of that every, I think, January, February from the finance director gives you a list of that, of those projects.
Yeah, I guess the reason I was
Yeah.
asking the question is because, you have this situation where we're estimating we're spending $170 million in 2009 on the CIP.
Right, that's right.
But it's possible we're actually going to spend more than that because of possible carryover for that project. And
Well, I think the concept of the carryovers and the carry forwards is you're just you're not exceeding your appropriation. You're just spanning years. Would you agree with that, Gene? Is what they're doing. They're not really spending more than was appropriated. They're not allowed to do that. But you don't finish the projects neatly by December of each year. So that appropriation just automatically carries over. As you might be aware, CIP has the first 3 years of CIP are sort of set in stone. The last 2 years are a little iffy, so they don't have to be reappropriated those first 3 years.
Director Roanhurst, do you want to add something else to this discussion?
Yes, the money, the carry forwards and carryovers, you have those in your financial statements. That's one of the first things that you do in the year as far as making changes. You appropriate the actual budget, let's say for 08, you appropriate that in September, October timeframe of 07.
right.
When you roll over into 08, you do another appropriation it's not really an appropriation, it's an amendment. It's an amendment to the budget for these projects that aren't completed and will be completed in the following year. As far as the life of a CIP project, the way the charter is written, it's kind of interesting. Everybody thinks that jobs can only last 3 years. That's not the way the charter is written. The charter is written, all that has to happen is some kind of event, a purchase will keep it alive. It has to run for 3 years without any activity, and then it dies. But if there's any activity, if somebody buys a 2x4, or a pile of sand, that keeps it alive. So you could have a CIP project out there for a long period of time and not much happening on it.
Thank you.
Councilor Liz, go ahead.
Just a comment for Dr. Staggers. I believe I did read someplace in this book that we spent $180,000 on design work for Drake Springs this year. That's actually been paid out, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, in fact, we have the blueprints down in our office. We went over to Sarah and Associates and got those, and we intend to do some construction auditing on some of those big projects to make sure that we're not spending money for stuff that's not getting accomplished. But we're working with the engineering staff to do that.
I just wanted to assure Dr. Staggers it was alive for another year. So.
Yeah, I know that we're following the initiative that the citizens passed to the letter.
Any other questions for Mr. Oaksall?
I'll be back in 2 weeks to give you a mid-year status report.
And thank you very much for being with us today and for what you do for us all the time, too. With that, I am going to ask for a motion to go into executive session for contract negotiations. May I have a motion, please?
So moved, Litz.
Councilor Litz, and may I have a second to that motion?
I second that.
Okay, Councilor Jameson has seconded the motion to go into executive session for contractual negotiations. All in favor of the motion, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries, and by the way, it